I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia.
I was diagnosed with breast cancer during COVID. I had originally had no symptoms or anything of being sick. I felt a little fatigued and tired, and I think most people don't really know that they are sick at this point. I actually joined a gym to try to get healthier in the midst of all of this. Laying in bed one night after working out, I started having some pain in my chest and was kind of just noticing that as I touched my chest, it didn't feel right, and felt a lump. Contacted my primary care, went in to see her the very next week. She agreed that I needed to have it checked quite quickly. It was not normal to her. A week later, it was all very quick. A week later, I was in having a mammogram. Didn't really understand what was happening, but I knew it didn't seem good. Then they had the doctor come in, and he explained to me that there were some things showing up that, needed to be biopsied, and if I could come back. During COVID, it took about 2 or 3 weeks for that to happen. I went back in for the biopsy alone, and they put markers in me, these little metal markers, and I asked the doctor doing it, I said, "So what do I do if this comes back and it's not cancer?" And she looked at me and she was like, "You have cancer."
I studied dance at the University of Alabama. Once I graduated, I moved to Nashville and started pursuing that career. I landed a job touring with Sesame Street. So I was out on the road, just in the absolute best shape of my life, best health of my life, so I thought. And I started noticing after the show that I was still a little short of breath while I was at rest. This was 3 or 4 hours after the show, and I just could not seem to catch my breath. My friends and I, we just kept writing it off. It's a hard show, and your body just needs a few extra hours to recover. So I go to the urgent care, and the doctor's really sweet and does all these breathing treatments. And she was like, "Dani, I really want to help you get to the bottom of this. So I'm going to run a few extra tests. We don't typically do that here, but I can send it off and we'll call you with the results." And she calls me after that show and she's like, "Hey, Dani, I need you to come in. We got some results that I want to discuss with you." So then the doctor walks in and she sits there and she's like, "Dani, I think you have leukemia." And I remember I asked her, "Well, how sure?" She said, "I'm 98% sure that you have leukemia." It was about 2 years since I rang the bell and I was going for just a usual checkup, and they did blood work. My doctor walks in and he says, "Dani, there's this one number that is slightly elevated. It's so small, I normally wouldn't do anything, but I know how your mom is and she's gonna want answers, so I'm gonna run this test for her just so she can sleep tonight." And I get a call from my mom and she says, "Dr. Butler is on the way to our house." And, a few minutes later, my precious oncologist from Mobile is knocking on my door to give me a hug and try to explain where things go from here. He said, "Unfortunately, Dani, I'm going to have to pass you on." He said, "We're going to have to send you to Vanderbilt, and you're most likely going to have a bone marrow transplant. I have already put in calls, and I know what doctor I want you to see. We're going to get appointments set up, and I promise you that you're going to be in the best hands in Vanderbilt, and I promise you that I'm going to continue to be by your side, even though I'm not your doctor anymore."
I got so sick that I remember everybody always tells you you're a fighter, you're the strongest person you know. Cancer comes with the warrior, you're a fighter, you're all these little hashtags that they put on you. But I never felt like a fighter. And I actually remember telling my husband, if the next person that tells me I'm the strongest person they know, I'm just gonna lose it on them, because all it was doing was making me feel weaker and weaker because I didn't feel strong. I was laying in this bed fighting to even get up to go to the kitchen. I have, at the time, I have a 10-year-old daughter that I couldn't care for her. I couldn't cook for her. I mean, she was taking care of me. I mean, my husband would have to go to work. Life in your house goes on. And one night my husband came in, and I remember I had chemo the next day. And I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I was crying, and he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I can't do it anymore." He reminded me of my children and how close our family is, and that my 10-year-old needed me. And the next morning I got up, and I told him, one more. And one more became a motto in our house. I was like, one more. And for me, that was the day I became a fighter. That moment, I decided every day for me is one more. I'll get through today, I'll get through one more.
Unfortunately, I relapsed a year after my first stem cell transplant, and I had to start over with the donor process. And thankfully, we found my cousin. He was a half match, and I was able to get another stem cell transplant. I am currently 19 months post-transplant, which is just something I didn't think that I could achieve, and I'm feeling great. There's no set plan that tells you how to live in this new world post-cancer, and you need resources that help you just jump back into everyday life. That first training session with Survivor Fitness, I knew that if I worked hard, I could gain my strength back. And it gave me this confidence and this encouragement to take that step to start working out again. And had it not been for Survivor Fitness the first time, I don't know if I would have had the courage to step back into a gym.
Pre-cancer, her light showed through while she was on stage performing and working out. Survivor Fitness got her back into that routine of, hey, I can do this again. Figuring out emotionally that, hey, I can re-enter a gym, and I know it's not what I used to be, but I know I can take steps to try to get back to that point.
So I decided to start the program and to see what this was about. And I remember pulling up to the facility where it was at, which was not a traditional gym. And all I was doing was watching these people run up 8 steps. And there were 8 steps there because I kept counting them. And I wasn't counting them for the women running up them. I was trying to see if I thought I could get up those 8 steps. I decided to get out and try, and it took me forever to walk up those 8 steps. I mean, I was that weak. And I had to walk from the car to the steps and then into the facility. And I met the trainer that Survivor Fitness paired me with. And one of the things was, "What are you struggling with?" And I laughed and I said, "Those 8 steps." And she said, "What?" And I said, "Those 8 steps outside. That's where I'm at." And she laid her clipboard down and she said, "We'll start there." A year of starting with you guys with Survivor Fitness, I went from steps to, I did a sprint triathlon. I swam, I biked, I walked. I didn't do the run. But at the end of the triathlon, the light was back. And I didn't think I could do it, just like I didn't think I could do those 8 steps. And all the way up, keep saying, I don't think I could do this. And I would have never done that without Survivor Fitness. I mean, whether or not you guys do the banquets and you have all these fundraisers, that's what it was about. I got to the end.
And see you go from broken and beaten to seeing that light come back. You know, seeing the Shawyn that I loved and lived with and experienced life with, and now I'm getting her back. Cancer took so much away.
And now I'm not a fighter. I'm a warrior.
You sure are.
I am.
You're my warrior.